Hello, I'm Karen Locke Culp with the We Turned Out Okay podcast, and I'm getting in here this afternoon because I know that you are worried about, or at least there's a very good chance that you are worried about the racism that's really seems to have come to a boil in these certainly in these last few years, but also just in these last few days, this last week, where there's all kinds of civil unrest, and it's a scary time, and a lot of parents are wondering, how do I talk to my kids about the racism that I see, and what do I do about it? And I know that you're worried about it, at least most likely, because I recorded a special bonus episode of the podcast this week answering a listener question. And the question was, as a white person, what can I do to make sure that my kids aren't aren't contributing to the racism that hurts so many? And it's been downloaded. It was downloaded within the first 24 hours, like hundreds, 500 times, something like that. And it's been downloaded a lot more than that now. And so I wanted to get in here and just share quickly. I've identified 5 ways, as it turns out, to talk to kids about the racism that and the situations that we're seeing in the news. You know, seeing images that are really scary, maybe of white guys carrying torches or worse. A lot of times, much worse, right? And there's just a lot of talk about this, and I know in my neck of the woods there's a lot of talk about it because there's going to be a white supremacist rally this weekend on the Boston Common. I live just outside of Boston in a suburb, and I think a lot of parents are going to be hearing the chanting and hearing about it endlessly in the news and worrying. It is what's happening. What happened last weekend in Charlottesville? Is that going to happen here? And I wanted to give you these keys so that you could feel better and help your kids feel better as well. So the first one is, this is probably the most important one. It is help your child feel safe. Like, safety is the biggest, most above all thing. And we can do that basically by listening if they have questions. If your child comes home and says, like, oh, I saw this on the news, or so and so says that, we're all gonna there's gonna be a man, or maybe they would even say something like, I saw a man drive his car into a bunch of people. Is that going to happen to me? Is that going to happen to us? Because your child is really, the children, just where they are developmentally, they're so egocentric. That's what they think about. What's going to happen to me and my family? And so your first job is to reassure your child that they are fine and that you are fine, and that and if this persists, maybe just try and listen a little bit more to really what their fears are, and just try hard to kind of address those immediate fears. Don't brush it under the table. Don't say something like, oh, you don't have to worry about that, because your child will still worry about it. There's nothing we can do about that. What we have to do is help them by hearing them and empathizing with them. And so that's the first one. The second one, these next 4 are a lot about how to talk to your kids, or how to really help if you're feeling helpless about racism. And the first way is to recognize that racism is a learned behavior. As I believe Nelson Mandela said, no one was born hating. And we, for ourselves, if we know it was learned and it can be unlearned, we have a really great opportunity with our young kids. We can start them off well, not subscribing to racism. And that means we can't subscribe to it either, which of course you don't. And then the second way is to find common ground. So we have a great friend of the podcast named Janine Holleran, who is a mental health expert. She's come on the show multiple times, talk about play, talk about coping skills in children. And she happens to be African American. She's married to a white man, and she very kindly wrote and shared her ideas about what parents can do. And the first idea she had was to find common ground. So find everybody, she says, for example, loves their children. Everybody experiences sleepless nights. Every one of you, just like me, knows what a temper tantrum feels like from the inside. And if we can find that common ground, if we can really have that empathy with each other, then that's a great step to take in confronting the racism. And then the third way is also from Janine. She suggests finding, as they always happen in parents, using teachable moments. So using these moments to show kindness and understanding and foster those things in our kids. And then the fifth thing that I wanted to talk about today is the idea of modeling. So we model behavior more than we say for our kids, right? And if we're modeling something that goes against what we say, so if we say, oh, you know, I can't even, I haven't thought of a good example, but if we say something like, of course we support, you know, people of all colors and people of all sexual orientations and all those kinds of divisions that we adults see, and we model something different, or our kids overhear us talking to somebody else about our doubts about some of those things, or if the example I used in a podcast episode recently was if we're walking down the street and we switch our purse to the other side to not have it on the same side as a person of color. I mean, those are subtle things, and they may be inside of us, and our kids see everything. So we have to basically practice what we preach, because the preaching doesn't have anywhere near as much of an effect as the practicing does. So those are the 5 ways that I'm thinking of that you can help your child confronting this racism that we have in our society. And I also like them because I think they're a way to get out of this situation. If we can do those 5 things, then we can end up in a world that doesn't have racism anymore. And wouldn't that be awesome? All right, well, that's it for this YouTube just update about 5 things you can do to talk to your kids about race and help and feel less helpless. Talk to you soon. Bye. Thanks for watching. Bye.